I stared at my phone screen and my heart stopped. I love you, Mr. Elvis. The message glowed there, mocking me. I didn't send this. My 6-year-old son, Benny, had grabbed my unlocked phone while I was making dinner and texted his favorite person, who just happened to be my boss, Elvis Thornwood. When I walked into the living room, Benny was sitting cross-legged in front of the television, giggling at his cartoons like he'd just accomplished something wonderful. Meanwhile, I stood frozen in the doorway, watching my entire career crumble in real time. My hands were shaking as I reread the message. The little heart emoji made it worse. So much worse. Should I delete it? No. Too late, it showed as read. Should I send a follow-up explanation? That would make me look even more desperate. My mind raced through 1,000 scenarios, each one more humiliating than the last. Then my phone vibrated in my palm. Elvis Thornwood was calling me. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry as sandpaper. My finger hovered over the accept button for what felt like an eternity before I finally pressed it. "Hello, sir?" My voice came out shaky and uncertain. "Marlon." His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. "I received your text message." My stomach dropped to the floor. "Sir, that wasn't, it was an accident. Your son sent it, correct?" There was no anger in his tone, just a statement of fact that somehow felt worse than yelling would have. "Yes, Manny. He's only 6. He doesn't understand boundaries yet. Last month when I brought him to the office during that emergency, you gave him a lollipop from your desk drawer. He's been talking about you ever since. He thought you two were friends now, and he just wanted to—" "Marlon." He cut me off smoothly, professionally. "Come to my office tomorrow morning. We need to have a personal discussion about this situation." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there like a statue, phone still pressed to my ear even though the call had ended. Elvis Thornwood wasn't just any boss. He was the kind of man who could silence an entire boardroom with one glance. Sharp, calculating, composed, the type who never showed weakness or emotion. His reputation preceded him everywhere he went. People respected him. People feared him. And now he probably thought I was some desperate employee trying to manipulate him through my kid. The worst part? I couldn't even be angry at Benny. He was innocent in all of this. I turned to look at him. He was still absorbed in his cartoon, munching on crackers, completely oblivious to the chaos he'd created. His dark curls bounced as he laughed at something on screen. He looked so small, so pure. How could I explain this to him without making him feel bad? "Benny," I called softly, walking over to sit beside him on the carpet. "Can we talk for a second, buddy?" He looked up at me with those huge brown eyes that always melted my heart. "What's up, Papa? Why did you send that message to Mr. Elvis?" His face lit up immediately. "Because you always talk about him. You say he's really smart and really nice. You come home and tell me stories about work, and Mr. Elvis is always the hero who fixes everything. So I thought if you love him, I should love him too. That's what families do, right? We love the same people." My chest tightened painfully. Out of the mouths of children, he'd taken my professional admiration, my casual comments about having a great boss, and turned them into something pure and simple in his child's mind. He wasn't trying to cause trouble. He was trying to be like me. "Oh, buddy." I pulled him into a hug, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. "That's very sweet, but grown-ups are complicated. We can't just tell everyone we love them, okay? Especially not my boss." "But why not? If he's nice, why can't we tell him?" How do you explain professional boundaries to a first grader? How do you tell your son that the world isn't as simple and beautiful as he thinks it is? I couldn't crush that innocence. Not yet, because sometimes grown-ups have special rules, I said lamely. "But it's okay, we'll figure it out." "Are you in trouble?" His little eyebrows scrunched together with worry. "No, baby. I'm not in trouble." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. "Go back to your show. I'll make us some hot chocolate." But as I stood in the kitchen, mechanically heating milk on the stove, I knew I was lying. I was definitely in trouble. Tomorrow I'd have to face Elvis Thornwood and explain that my personal life was bleeding into my professional one in the messiest way possible. I'd have to look him in those intense gray eyes and somehow convince him that this was all innocent, that I wasn't some creep with ulterior motives. I thought about Elvis, really thought about him for the first time. Beyond just boss and employee. He was probably in his mid-30s, always impeccably dressed, always in control. I'd worked under him for 2 years, and never once seen him flustered or uncertain. He commanded respect without demanding it. There was something almost untouchable about him, like he existed on a different plane from the rest of us ordinary people. And now my son had texted him a love confession with a heart emoji. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all, but nothing felt funny. This job was everything to me. After Benny's mother left us, walked out when he was barely 2 years old. Without a backward glance, I'd rebuilt our lives from scratch. This position at Thornwood Industries paid well enough that I could afford decent childcare, a safe apartment, and occasionally even small luxuries for Benny. I couldn't lose it. I wouldn't survive losing it. The milk began to simmer, and I poured it into 2 mugs, stirring in chocolate powder with mechanical precision. My mind kept replaying Elvis's voice on the phone. That unusual calmness. What was he thinking right now? Was he laughing about this with someone? Was he annoyed, angry, concerned? "Papa, is it ready?" Benny called from the living room. "Coming, sweetheart." I carried the mugs carefully, handing one to Benny and settling beside him on the couch. He snuggled against my side, warm and trusting, while some animated movie played on the screen. I wrapped my arm around him and tried to be present in this moment instead of spiraling about tomorrow. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, Elvis Thornwood's office. Tomorrow would either be a simple explanation and awkward laugh, or it would be the day my carefully constructed life fell apart. I kissed the top of Benny's head and held him a little tighter, trying to memorize this feeling of security before everything changed. I stood outside the office building at 8:45, clutching a now cold cup of coffee I'd bought an hour ago and forgotten to drink. My legs felt like lead. Every step toward those glass doors required conscious effort, like walking through water. The morning sun was too bright, the city too loud, and my suit felt too tight around my collar. I'd changed shirts 3 times this morning, unable to decide what outfit said I'm professional and this was completely innocent without screaming I'm trying too hard because I'm guilty. The email Elvis had sent last night was burned into my memory. 3 words. No punctuation. No context. My office. 9 a.m. That was it. No pleasantries. No reassurance. Just a command that had kept me awake until 3 in the morning, running through every possible outcome. I finally forced myself through the entrance. The lobby was already busy with employees heading to their departments, everyone focused on their own morning routines. Nobody noticed me sweating through my carefully chosen shirt. The elevator ride felt eternal. I watched the numbers climb: 3rd floor, 4th floor, 5th, each one bringing me closer to potential disaster. When the doors opened on the 7th floor, my stomach was in knots. Executive territory. Everything up here was polished and intimidating, from the marble floors to the expensive artwork on the walls. I walked past several offices until I reached the one at the corner. Elvis's domain. His assistant Ivy glanced up from her computer. She was probably in her late 40s, always perfectly put together with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Today, though, her expression was softer than usual, almost sympathetic. "Good morning, Marlon. He's waiting for you." She gestured toward the heavy wooden door. "Go right in." I knocked twice, my knuckles barely making a sound against the solid wood. "Enter." I pushed the door open and stepped into a space that always made me feel small. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. The desk was sleek black glass, minimalist and expensive. Everything was organized with military precision, and behind that desk sat Elvis Thornwood in a crisp navy suit, his silver tie perfectly knotted, those intense gray eyes fixed directly on me. He wasn't smiling. He never really smiled, but there was something different in his expression today, something I couldn't quite read. "Close the door, please." His voice was measured, professional. I did as instructed and stood there awkwardly, unsure whether to sit or keep standing or maybe just run screaming from the building. "Sit down, Marlon." I sank into the chair across from him, my back rigid, hands clasped in my lap. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band, pulled too tight, ready to snap. I could hear my own breathing, could feel every second ticking by like a countdown. "I want to ask you something." Elvis leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Your son Benny, where is his mother? That wasn't what I expected. At all. I'd prepared for questions about appropriate workplace behavior, about boundaries, about why I couldn't control my child. But this was personal. She's not in the picture. My voice came out rougher than intended. She left when Benny was 2. Just packed a bag one morning and walked out. No explanation, no custody battle, no contact since then. It's been just the 2 of us ever since. Something flickered across Elvis's face. For just a moment, that carefully maintained mask slipped, and I saw something underneath. Understanding? Pain? It was gone before I could identify it. You've never requested flexible hours, he observed, his tone shifting slightly. Never asked for parental leave extensions. Never mentioned needing support with childcare arrangements. You take every overtime shift offered. You stay late when projects demand it. You've never once used your child as a reason to step back from your responsibilities. I can't afford to, I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. This job is everything. It's how I keep a roof over Benny's head, how I pay for his school, how I make sure he has everything he needs. I can't be the employee who's always asking for special treatments. I have to work twice as hard to prove I'm reliable despite being a single parent. Elvis was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled together, elbows resting on the arms of his chair. He looked like he was weighing something important, making calculations I couldn't follow. You're not being fired, Marlon. My brain short-circuited. What? You're not being terminated. That text from your son was inappropriate for a workplace context. Yes, but it was clearly innocent. A child expressing affection in the only way he knows how. I'm not going to punish you for your son's inability to understand professional boundaries. Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost felt dizzy. Thank you. God, thank you. I was so worried. However, Elvis interrupted smoothly. I do have a proposal. My relief stuttered. A proposal? That could mean anything. He stood up, walking around the desk to perch on its edge, closer to me now. This proximity felt deliberate, intentional. He crossed his arms, and I noticed for the first time how the suit jacket stretched across his shoulders, how precisely his cufflinks caught the light. I'd like to take you and Benny to dinner. I blinked, once, twice, tried to process those words. I'm sorry, what? Dinner. The 3 of us. Somewhere nice. Tomorrow evening if you're available. I don't understand. My confusion must have been written all over my face. Why would you want to have dinner with us? 'Cause I'm curious. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. I've watched you for 2 years, Marlon. You're dedicated, intelligent, capable under pressure. But I realized yesterday that I know almost nothing about your personal life. Nothing real, and your son clearly has strong feelings about me, based on whatever you've told him. I'd like to understand that dynamic better. This isn't some kind of test, is it? To see if I'm professional enough to separate work from personal life. No. His answer was firm, definite. This is me extending an invitation because I want to. You can say no. There will be no professional repercussions either way. But I'd appreciate it if you'd consider accepting. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes I'd never noticed before. Loneliness. Maybe. Or longing. Something that suggested Elvis Thornwood, perfect and untouchable, might actually be human underneath all that polish. Okay, I heard myself say. Yes. We'll come to dinner. A small smile touched the corner of his mouth. Brief, barely there, but genuine. Good. I'll send you the details. You can go now, Marlon. I stood up on shaky legs and made it to the door before his voice stopped me. And Marlon? Tell Benny I said thank you for his message. It was the nicest thing anyone said to me in a very long time. I left his office with my mind spinning, unable to shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted between us. The restaurant Elvis chose was the kind of place I'd only ever seen in magazines. Soft lighting from crystal chandeliers. Tables spaced far enough apart for privacy. White tablecloths that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. A pianist played something classical in the corner. The melody floating through the air like expensive perfume. I felt immediately out of place in my nicest button-down shirt and khakis. The best I owned. but clearly not enough for this environment. Benny, however, was thrilled. He bounced in his seat, eyes wide, taking in everything with pure wonder. "Papa, this place is like a castle." "Inside voice, buddy," I whispered, hyper-aware of the other diners who all look like they belonged here. "Unlike us." "He's fine." Elvis appeared beside our table so quietly I startled. He was dressed more casually than I'd ever seen him. Dark jeans, a charcoal sweater that somehow looked both relaxed and expensive. His usual severity softened by the absence of a suit. He looked younger like this. More approachable. Let him be excited. That's what being 6 is for. He slid into the seat across from me, and suddenly the table felt much smaller. Benny immediately launched into an enthusiastic description of his day at school, and I watched in amazement as Elvis gave him his complete attention. No phone checking. No distracted nods. He actually listened, asked follow-up questions, seemed genuinely interested in the intricate politics of first-grade recess. "So you're telling me that Marcus took your favorite swing, but then Emma helped you get it back by distracting him with her jump rope?" Elvis summarized, his expression serious as if discussing a crucial business negotiation. "Exactly." Benny beamed. "Emma's really smart. She's my best friend." "Sounds like you have good taste in allies." The waiter arrived, and Elvis ordered for all of us with easy confidence. Pasta for Benny, something more sophisticated for the two of us that I couldn't even pronounce. Wine for the table, sparkling cider for Benny. Everything flowed smoothly under his direction, and I realized this was probably what he was like outside the office. Still commanding but without the cold edge. "You seem nervous," Elvis observed after the waiter left. His attention was fully on me now, and I felt pinned under that gray gaze. "This is just unexpected," I admitted. "Yesterday I thought I was getting fired. Today I'm having dinner in the nicest restaurant I've ever been to with my boss and my son. It's a lot to process." "I'm not your boss right now," he said it matter-of-factly. "Right now we're 3 people sharing a meal. No hierarchy, no professional obligations. Just this." Benny had pulled out the small coloring book I'd brought, and was already absorbed in turning a dragon purple and green. The background music swelled slightly, something romantic and sweeping. The lighting caught the sharp angles of Elvis's face, and I found myself noticing details I'd never let myself see before. The way his hair had a slight wave to it when not styled within an inch of its life. The small scar above his left eyebrow. The fact that his eyes weren't just gray, they had flecks of blue around the edges. "Tell me something real about yourself," Elvis said suddenly. "Something nobody at the office knows." I laughed nervously. "Why?" "Because I want to know. Because yesterday your son said he loved me based on stories you've told him, and I realized you see something in me that other people don't. I'm curious what that is." The wine arrived. I took a sip, needing the courage. "Fine. Something real? I'm terrified every single day that I'm failing Benny. That I'm not enough. His mother leaving broke something in me. Made me question if I'm capable of being what he needs. So I overcompensate. I work too hard. I say yes to everything. I try to be perfect because I'm scared that if I'm not, if I show any weakness, someone will decide I'm not fit to raise him alone." Elvis was very still, his wine glass halfway to his lips. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in years." "Your turn," I challenged, emboldened by his reaction. "Something real about you." He set down his glass, and for a moment I thought he'd deflect. "Then, I'm lonely. Profoundly, achingly lonely. I have money, success, respect, everything society says should make me happy, but I go home to an empty apartment every night and can't remember the last time someone looked at me like I was more than a paycheck or a connection. Until your son sent that text. He meant it. Pure, uncomplicated affection from someone who has no agenda. It reminded me what I've been missing." The air between us felt charged. Electric. Benny's crayon scratched against paper, oblivious to the moment unfolding above his head. "That's why you invited us." I realized. "You wanted to feel that again." Maybe. Or maybe I wanted to know the man who raises a child capable of that kind of openness. He leaned forward slightly. "What do you tell Benny about me?" "I'm genuinely curious." I felt my face heat. "Just that you're fair. That you give people chances to prove themselves. That you see potential in your employees and help them grow. That you're the kind of leader people want to work hard for. Not because they're scared of you, but because they respect you. But you are scared of me, he pointed out. I can see it in how you tense up when I walk past your desk. That's not fear, I corrected softly. That's awareness. Of what? The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. Our food arrived before I had to answer. Breaking the tension, Benny's pasta came with a special presentation that made him gasp with delight, and the conversation shifted back to safer territory. But throughout the meal, I felt Elvis's eyes on me. Thoughtful, considering. When Benny eventually asked to go to the bathroom, Elvis offered to take him. Stay here, finish your wine, we'll be right back. I watched them walk away together, Benny's small hand trustingly in Elvis's larger one, chattering away about something. Elvis's head tilted down to listen. Something in my chest cracked open. This man, who everyone thought was made of ice and ambition, was being gentle with my son, being present, being real. They returned a few minutes later, Benny proudly announcing that Elvis had shown him the fancy soap dispensers that were automatic. Such a small thing, but the joy on Benny's face was everything. As dinner wound down and Elvis drove us home in his sleek black car, so different from my beat-up sedan, Benny fell asleep in the back seat, worn out from excitement. The car was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine and Benny's gentle breathing. Thank you, I said quietly. This was really special for him, for both of us. Elvis glanced at me, streetlights sliding across his features. I haven't enjoyed an evening this much in years. When we pulled up to my building, modest, slightly run down compared to what Elvis was probably used to, he walked us to the door. I carried a sleeping Benny, his head heavy on my shoulder. Marlon, Elvis said as I fumbled with my keys one-handed. Can I be honest about something? Haven't we been doing that all evening? Your son wasn't wrong. His voice was low, intense. In his message, he wasn't wrong. Before I could process what that meant, he touched my shoulder briefly. Just a moment of contact and walked back to his car. I stood in my doorway long after his taillights disappeared, my heart racing, everything I thought I understood about tonight suddenly uncertain. The next morning, I stood outside the office building, gripping my briefcase like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Everything felt different. The air seemed heavier. Even the revolving doors looked more intimidating than usual. Elvis had sent me a calendar invite at midnight. No subject line, just a time slot, 9 a.m. His office. The lack of context made my stomach twist into knots all night. I barely slept. Benny had asked me twice during breakfast why I looked so tired, and I'd lied, telling him I stayed up watching a movie. The truth was, I couldn't stop replaying that dinner. The way Elvis looked at Benny, the way he looked at me. There was something in his eyes that night, something I'd never seen in 3 years of working under him. Something that made my chest feel tight and my thoughts spiral into dangerous territory. I took the elevator to the executive floor, my reflection staring back at me in the polished steel doors. I looked pale, anxious, like someone about to face a verdict. When the doors opened, the hallway stretched before me like a courtroom aisle. Elvis's office was at the end, glass walls revealing nothing but shadows and sunlight. His assistant Ivy glanced up from her desk and gave me a knowing smile. It wasn't the usual polite acknowledgement. It was warmer, almost encouraging. He's waiting for you, Marlon. Go ahead. I knocked twice. His voice came through, calm but quieter than usual. Come in. I stepped inside. The office was immaculate as always. Minimalist furniture, a massive oak desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But Elvis wasn't sitting behind his desk in his usual power position. He was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the skyline. He didn't turn around immediately. Close the door, he said softly. I did. The click of the latch felt final, like sealing a tomb. My heartbeat echoed in my ears as I walked closer, stopping a few feet behind him. Sir, if this is about the text. It's not, he interrupted, still facing the window. Not entirely. Silence stretched between us. I could see his reflection in the glass, the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders seemed less rigid than usual. He looked almost vulnerable, and that scared me more than his usual composure ever did. Marlon, he finally said, turning to face me, His gray eyes locked onto mine and I felt my breath hitch. I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Don't interrupt. Don't panic. Just hear me out. I nodded, unable to form words. He took a step closer, then another. We were only a few feet apart now, close enough that I could see the faint lines around his eyes, the stubble he'd missed while shaving that morning. He looked human, real, not the untouchable executive I'd kept at arm's length for years. "I've been watching you," he began, and my stomach dropped. Not in a creepy way, don't misunderstand. I mean, I've been observing who you are. The way you work, the way you carry yourself. You come in early, leave late, never complain. You take on extra projects without asking for credit. You're kind to everyone, even the interns who mess up your reports. I swallowed hard, unsure where this was going. But it wasn't just your work ethic that caught my attention. Elvis continued, his voice dropping lower. It was that day 3 months ago when you brought Benny to the office. Because your babysitter canceled. Remember? I did. It had been mortifying. Benny had run around the break room, knocked over a plant, and accidentally called Elvis the tall man with the serious face. I watched you handle him with so much patience, Elvis said, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. You weren't embarrassed. You weren't harsh. You just knelt down, looked him in the eye and explained why he needed to be careful. And then you apologized to everyone so sincerely even though it wasn't necessary. That's when I started noticing you differently. My mouth went dry. Elvis, I don't understand what you're— I'm saying I have feelings for you, Marlon. The words hit me like a freight train. I actually took a step back, my hand reaching for the desk to steady myself. What? I know how this sounds, he said quickly, his composure cracking slightly. I'm your boss. There's a power imbalance. It's inappropriate. I've gone over every reason why I shouldn't feel this way. And trust me, I've tried to stop. But I can't. My mind was racing, 1,000 thoughts colliding at once. This couldn't be real. Elvis Thornwood, cold, brilliant, untouchable Elvis was standing in front of me, confessing feelings. For me, a single father drowning in bills and responsibilities. Someone who could barely keep his life together. Why are you telling me this? I whispered, my voice shaking. Because that text from Benny made me realize something. Elvis said, his eyes softening. Life is too short to pretend. I've spent years building walls, keeping everyone at a distance. I thought that's what success required. But then you and your son walked into my life, literally accidentally, and everything shifted. He took another step closer. We were inches apart now. I could feel the heat radiating off him, smell the faint cologne he always wore. I'm not asking you to say yes right now, Elvis said, his voice barely above a murmur. I'm not even asking you to feel the same way. I just needed you to know, because hiding it was eating me alive, and I don't want to lie to you. You deserve honesty. My chest felt like it was caving in. I wanted to run. I wanted to stay. I wanted to scream at him for making this so complicated, and I wanted to lean into the warmth of his words. I have a son, I finally said, my voice cracking. My life is messy. I'm barely holding it together most days. You're you. Successful, put together. Who could have anyone? Why would you want this? Want me? Elvis reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his hand gently wrapped around my wrist. His touch was warm, steady, grounding. Because you're real, Marlon, he said simply. You're everything I'm not. You're warm and caring and genuine. You make me want to be better. And Benny, his voice softened even more. That kid is incredible. He's funny and kind and so full of life. Being around you both makes me feel like I'm actually living, not just existing. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. I blinked them back, hating how exposed I felt. This is insane. I know. It could ruin everything. I know that too. Then why risk it? Elvis's grip on my wrist tightened slightly. Not painfully, just enough to keep me anchored. Because some things are worth the risk. I pulled my hand away, needing space to breathe, to think. I walked toward the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass. The city sprawled below us, millions of people living their own complicated lives. Mine felt impossibly tangled in this moment. I need time, I said quietly, not turning around. I need to process this. Think about Benny. Figure out if this is even possible. Take all the time you need, Elvis replied. There was no pressure in his voice, no manipulation, just understand. I turned to face him one last time before leaving. He looked different now, less like my untouchable boss and more like a man who'd just laid his heart bare. Vulnerable, hopeful, terrified. Thank you for being honest, I said. Thank you for not running, he replied with a small sad smile. I left his office, my mind spinning, my heart pounding. Everything had changed in the span of 10 minutes, and I had no idea how to move forward. But as I walked back to my desk, I realized something. For the first time in years, I felt something other than exhaustion and obligation. I felt possibility. That night, I couldn't eat. Benny sat across from me at our small kitchen table, happily munching on chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs, completely oblivious to the war raging inside my head. He chattered about his day at school, something about a science experiment involving vinegar and baking soda. But I could barely focus. My phone sat face down on the counter, burning a hole in my consciousness. Elvis had texted an hour ago, just one line. Whatever you decide, nothing changes at work. You're safe. Safe. The word felt both comforting and heavy. He was giving me an out, a way to pretend this morning never happened. But could I really do that? Could I go back to seeing him as just my boss after he'd stood there, stripped of all professional armor and told me he had feelings for me? Papa, you're not listening, Benny said, pulling me from my thoughts. Sorry, buddy. What did you say? I said, can Mr. Elvis come over sometime? I want to show him my Lego castle. My heart clenched. Of course Benny liked him. Elvis had been nothing but kind during that dinner, treating my son like he mattered, and Benny was starving for positive male attention, something I couldn't always provide while juggling work and single parenthood. Maybe, I said carefully. We'll see. After putting Benny to bed, I stood in my tiny bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes. Stubble I hadn't bothered shaving. I looked tired, worn down. When was the last time someone looked at me the way Elvis had this morning? When was the last time someone really saw me as more than just a struggling single dad? My phone buzzed. Another text from Elvis. I meant what I said. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, and let myself imagine it. What if I said yes? What if I let myself take this risk? The logical part of my brain screamed warnings, office gossip, power dynamics, the risk of losing my job if things went south. But there was another part of me buried deep beneath years of survival mode that whispered something different. What if this is your chance to be happy? I texted back before I could overthink it. Can we talk? In person? His response came within seconds. My place. Tomorrow morning. I'll send you the address. I barely slept that night. The next morning I dropped Benny off at my neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment. She watched him sometimes on weekends and drove across town to Elvis's address. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say a dozen times. But now that I was pulling up to his building, a sleek high-rise in the nice part of town, all those words evaporated. I took the elevator to the 15th floor, my reflection haunting me in the mirrored walls. When I reached his door, I stood there for a full minute before knocking. Elvis answered immediately, like he'd been waiting by the door. He was dressed casually, dark jeans and a gray sweater, and it threw me off balance. I'd never seen him in anything but suits. He looked softer, more approachable. Come in, he said, stepping aside. His apartment was surprisingly warm. I'd expected cold minimalism, but instead there were books on shelves, plants by the windows, framed photographs of landscapes. It felt lived in. Coffee? He offered. No, I need to say this before I lose my nerve. Elvis nodded, gesturing toward the couch. We sat, a careful distance between us. The morning light streamed through the windows, making his gray eyes look almost silver. I thought about what you said, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. And I'm terrified. Not of you, of everything this could mean. I've built my entire life around keeping betting safe and stable. I can't afford mistakes. I understand. Let me finish. I interrupted gently. He closed his mouth, listening. But I also realized something, I continued. I've been so focused on surviving that I forgot what it feels like to actually want something for myself. And the truth is, I do want this. I want to explore whatever this is between us. But I have conditions. Elvis leaned forward slightly. Name them. First, Benny comes first. Always. If he's uncomfortable at any point, we stop. No questions asked. Agreed. Second, we take this slow. No rushing. I need time to figure out how this fits into our lives. Of course. Third, I took a deep breath. If this doesn't work out, I need your word that it won't affect my job. I can't lose my income. Benny depends on me. Elvis's expression grew serious. Marlon, I would never do that to you. Whether we're together or not, you've earned your position through your own merit. That doesn't change. I searched his face for any sign of dishonesty. Found none. Okay, I said quietly. Then I'm willing to try. The relief that washed over Elvis's face was tangible. He didn't move to touch me, didn't close the distance between us. He just smiled. A real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Thank you, he said softly, for trusting me with this. We sat there for a moment, the weight of the decision settling over us. Then Elvis spoke again. His voice thoughtful. I want to do this right. I want Benny to be comfortable with me first. Can we spend time together, the three of us, before we define anything officially? I nodded, grateful for his consideration. That's exactly what I was hoping for. How about this afternoon? Elvis suggested. There's a park near here with a great playground. We could take Benny, let him play, see how he feels about me being around more often. He'd love that, I admitted. He's already asked when he can show you his Lego castle. Elvis's smile widened. I'd be honored to see it. We spent the rest of the morning talking, really talking. Not as boss and employee, but as two people trying to navigate something new and fragile. Elvis told me about his childhood, growing up with parents who valued achievement over affection. I told him about my ex-wife, how she'd left without warning, how I'd learned to be both mother and father to Benny. By the time I left to pick up Benny, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but it was wrapped in something softer now. Hope, anticipation, the terrifying, exhilarating feeling of standing at the edge of something unknown. That afternoon at the park, I watched Elvis push Benny on the swings, both of them laughing. Benny's face was lit up with pure joy and Elvis looked more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. When Benny ran off to climb the jungle gym, Elvis walked over to me, his hand brushing against mine, tentative, questioning. I didn't pull away. Instead, I let our fingers intertwine. Just for a moment. Is this okay? He asked quietly. I looked at Benny, happily playing, then back at Elvis. Yeah, I said, my chest feeling lighter than it had in years. This is okay. For the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. 3 months passed like a dream I was afraid to wake up from. Elvis became a constant presence in our lives, but not in an overwhelming way. He showed up for Benny's school play, sitting in the back row and cheering louder than any other parent when my son wobbled across the stage in a cardboard tree costume. He brought groceries when I worked late, never making a big deal about it, just quietly stocking our fridge with fresh vegetables and Benny's favorite snacks. He learned how to braid hair after Benny decided he wanted to grow his out like his favorite superhero. We didn't rush into anything physical. Our relationship built itself slowly, carefully, through shared moments and quiet understanding. A hand on the small of my back when we walked through the park. His jacket draped over my shoulders during a chilly evening. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, like I was something precious. The office had been surprisingly accepting once Elvis officially disclosed our relationship to HR. There were protocols, of course. I was transferred to report to a different senior manager to avoid any conflict of interest. A few people whispered, but most were either supportive or indifferent. Riley, Elvis's assistant, had actually hugged me, whispering, "About time he found someone who makes him smile." But tonight was different. Tonight was the company's annual gala, the biggest event of the year, where executives, clients, and investors mingled in their finest attire. Elvis had invited me as his +1, and the significance wasn't lost on me. This wasn't just attending an event together. This was him publicly claiming our relationship in front of everyone who mattered in his professional world. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting my tie for the 100th time. The suit had been a gift from Elvis. He'd insisted, saying he wanted me to feel confident tonight. It fit perfectly, tailored to my frame, and made me look like someone who belonged in his world. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Papa, you look like a prince," Benny declared, bouncing on my bed in his pajamas. Mrs. Chen was watching him tonight, and he was already in full sugar rush mode from the cookies she'd promised. "Thanks, buddy," I said, managing a smile. "You sure you're okay with me going out tonight?" "Yeah." Mrs. Chen said we can watch movies and eat popcorn. "And Mr. Elvis said he'll take me to the arcade tomorrow if I'm good." Mr. Elvis. Benny still called him that, but the title had transformed into something affectionate rather than formal. The progression of their relationship had been beautiful to watch. Elvis never tried to replace Benny's memory of his mother. Instead, he carved out his own space in my son's life, built on respect and genuine care. The doorbell rang. Elvis. Right on time. When I opened the door, my breath caught. He wore a black tuxedo that probably cost more than my car, his hair styled back, and a boutonniere pinned to his lapel. But what struck me most was the look in his eyes. Nervous excitement, like a teenager going to prom. "You look incredible," he said softly. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, my anxiety momentarily forgotten. Benny came running, launching himself at Elvis's legs. "Mr. Elvis, look at Papa. Doesn't he look fancy?" Elvis crouched down, giving Benny his full attention. "He looks perfect. And you're being extra good tonight for Mrs. Chen, right?" "Super good," Benny promised, holding up his pinky. Elvis hooked his pinky around Benny's, sealing the deal. The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, a string quartet playing in the corner. I felt out of place the moment we walked in, surrounded by women in designer gowns and men who probably had personal tailors. But Elvis's hand found the small of my back, steadying me. "Stay close to me," he murmured, "and remember you belong here just as much as anyone else." We made our rounds, Elvis introducing me to clients and colleagues. Some greeted me warmly, others with polite curiosity. I caught a few judgmental glances, but Elvis never left my side, never made me feel like I was anything less than his equal. The turning point came during dinner. The CEO gave a speech thanking the executive team, specifically praising Elvis for closing a major deal. Everyone applauded. Then, to my shock, Elvis stood. "Thank you," he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "But I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone important. This year has been professionally successful, yes, but it's also been personally transformative. I've learned that success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with." My heart began racing. He couldn't. Elvis turned to look at me, and the entire room followed his gaze. "Marlon has taught me what it means to be brave, to prioritize what truly matters, to be vulnerable, and I'm grateful that he took a chance on me." The room erupted in applause. Some people looked genuinely moved, others surprised. But all I could focus on was Elvis, sitting back down and reaching for my hand under the table, squeezing gently. "Did you just publicly declare your feelings for me in front of your entire company?" I whispered, somewhere between mortified and deeply touched. "Yes," he said simply. "Problem?" I shook my head, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face. "Not at all." Later, we escaped to the hotel's rooftop terrace. The city lights sprawled below us, and the night air was cool against my flushed cheeks. We stood at the railing, shoulders touching, comfortable in the silence. "Are you happy?" Elvis asked suddenly, his voice vulnerable in a way that still surprised me. I really thought about it. My life had changed so dramatically in such a short time. I'd gone from struggling alone to having someone who wanted to share my burdens. Benny had gone from a lonely kid to a child with 2 adults who adored him. We'd become a family, unconventional as it was. "Yes," I answered honestly, terrified sometimes, still adjusting. "But yes, I'm happy." Elvis turned to face me fully, his hands coming up to cup my face. "I love you, Marlon. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was afraid of moving too fast. But standing here with you, I need you to know I love you." Tears pricked my eyes. No one had said those words to me in years. I love you too, I whispered. So much it scares me. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. Our lips met softly, tentatively, then with more certainty. It wasn't our first kiss that had happened weeks ago in my kitchen after Benny had gone to bed, but this one felt different, final, like a promise being sealed. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. We're really doing this, aren't we? Building a life together? If you'll have me, Elvis replied. All of me, the workaholic tendencies, the emotional walls I'm still learning to tear down, the fact that I have no idea how to be a father figure but desperately want to try. We'll figure it out together, I said. That's what families do. The word family hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning, and as we stood there, the city glittering below, I realized that this was what happiness felt like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and worth every risk I'd taken to get here. When we returned home, Mrs. Chen reported that Benny had been an angel. We found him asleep on the couch, clutching a drawing he'd made, 3 stick figures holding hands, labeled Papa, me, and Mr. Elvis. Elvis picked up the drawing carefully, his eyes suspiciously bright. Can I keep this? He made it for you, I said softly. That night, after Mrs. Chen left and Elvis carried Benny to bed without waking him, we sat together in the living room. His arm around my shoulders, my head resting against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For being patient, for loving us exactly as we are, for making me believe in second chances. Elvis pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me with your heart and with Benny. I won't take that lightly. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, but inside our small apartment, everything felt complete. We'd started with an accidental text message, 3 words sent by an innocent child, and somehow built something beautiful from that chaos. Life wasn't perfect. I still worried about money sometimes. Elvis still worked too late occasionally. Benny still had moments where he missed having a traditional family. But we were learning to navigate it together, building our own version of normal. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, truly living, and it was everything I never knew I needed.